Welcome to the Orchestrate All the Things podcast. I'm George Anatiotis and we'll be connecting the dots together. Machine learning is eating the world and spilling over to established disciplines in software too. After MLOps, is the world ready to welcome MLGUI? Philip Vollet is somewhat of a celebrity, all things considered. Miley Cyrus or Lebron James he is not, at least not yet. But if data science lives up to the hype, who knows? As the senior data engineer with KPMG Germany, Vollet leads a small team of machine learning and data engineers building the integration layer for internal and company data with access standardization for internal and external stakeholders. Outside of KPMG, Vollet has built a tool chain to find, process, and share content on data science, machine learning, natural language processing, and open source using exactly these technologies, which makes for a case of meta, if nothing else. There is a flood of social media influencers sharing perspectives on data science and machine learning. Follett actually knows what he's talking about. While most influencers direct their attention slowly towards issues of model building and infrastructure scaling, Follett also looks at the user view or frameworks for building user interfaces for applications utilizing machine learning. We were intrigued to discuss with him how building these user interfaces is necessary to unlock AI's true potential. I hope you will enjoy the podcast. If you like my work, you can follow Link Data Orchestration on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook.
So I have a long track of history in regarding to technology or IT projects. So I have done consulting in this area. I have every time specialized on data or databases. So if it's graph databases or SQL databases, and have my own company in this area and do some freelancing work. Then starting at KPMG as freelancer and then getting a full-time job there. And at KPMG, we are an internal unit, so we are crunching data of the internal KPMG Germany data. So doing the internal reporting for our management and also building some data and machine learning pipelines to analyze the internal data. And we are responsible for parts of the internal KPMG data. So if there are projects which are want to access the data, we are between, or we are the layer between it, so that they are able to access data, but we are looking into the data streams and knowing explicit what's going on and what's going in. Yeah, I'm mostly interested in data, also in graph databases. So on LinkedIn, I'm advocating open source and open science projects, and that's where my heart belongs. So advocating open source projects and spreading the love and also the word of open source. Yeah, and today we want to discuss some front end or how to produce in front end for a machine learning project, and in general how it is to develop a machine learning project. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. And yeah, before we actually get to the front end part, let's start by mentioning briefly, because well, it may be obvious to you and me, but not to everyone, how applications that are powered by machine learning are different than traditional applications, because I think that will set the scene for the UI part.
For sure, that depends on your point of view. Well, most of the time for me, there is not really a difference. The reason here is I have the same steps for a regular development project or software development project, which I also have for a machine learning project. So there are some special aspects I will talk later on. But first of all, for me, it's the same. I have to do the people allocation. So seeing which engineers are on the project, I have to do the budget parts. I have to bring it into our Azure DevOps environment. Microsoft changed the name. Before it was Team Foundation Server. Now it's Microsoft Azure DevOps. And we are doing our project there. We do our Scrum planning there, or Scrum sprints. And for me, it's bringing all the PBIs into Azure DevOps and plan the sprints and talk to the shareholder of the company, to the stakeholders of the company, which is responsible for which part of the project, and then having the project in the pipe and do the planning. So what's special for machine learning projects, the special part here is we have to keep track of the data, and we have also keep track of the models, because model drift is real. So it's possible that today our model is fitting perfect into our needs, but in 6 months we have to evaluate or look into the model if it's also hitting what we want that it's hit. Yeah, and there are also tools for do the continuous integration parts, because only bringing the project from dev to staging and then into production is half of the work. So the real work begins if you're hitting production and having it as continuous integration project running. So for us is developing the project and then handing it over to operations, because we have special operation units which are keeping track or care of the final projects if they are running. So we have an operations part there, and it's also, we try to keep it as DevOps. So it's in production, but it's not fixed there. We have new Scrum iterations or Scrum sprints to readjust what's there, and also to bring new client feature request into the project, so that we are not running it. There's not the need to run a full project if it's some days in production. So we try to have a DevOps idea of the project, and doing a continuous circle of integration and also a continuous circle of development for the project. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, that was quite elaborate answer, and you also touched upon what I wanted to ask next, actually, which was going to be the different stages in creating an application powered by machine learning. And well, as it sounds, it's the stages themselves are pretty much the same. And yes, you very much correctly highlighted the main difference, which is model development, basically. So well, in classical DevOps, let's say, you also have code development, and that may change. But I guess typically you may have more iterations in machine learning models than you possibly have in code after it reaches some stable state. So I was wondering where in those stages that you mentioned, and in what form actually does a user interface come into play? And what is the importance of having one, and whether this is meant to serve, initially at least, as a quick way for the people who develop the machine learning models to have a feeling and be able to check what they're developing, or whether this can also serve at a later stage as a basis for developing the actual end user interface.
So yeah, here it depends, but I try to have them on board in the first sprint. So if we have stakeholders, it's a handy trick for project management to have your stakeholders on your first iteration. It's high-end the commitment. So if they're on board and able to interrupt or to bring their features into the project, the commitment, if we are going to the production deployment, is higher of them, because they are in the loop, they are responsible for their ideas, and they're also, yeah, I always try it, but there are also situations to break with this rule for sure. Sometimes it's not good to have too many people on board if you are deploying or developing an application. So when your team is knowing what a good application in this case is, sometimes it's better not to have too many people in the first circle and showing them the final product, because yeah, that is part of the people management and stakeholder management, to also handle the believing of what it's a good product or end product. So sometimes you can break with it, but most of the time I try to have them in loop on the first iteration, or the first from the starting point. So, and then it's high the commitment, and also then having a good UI or a good user interface is needed, because if we are only showing them code snippet, it's too abstract. So we can formulate an idea of what's happening there, and we can also guide it, but having an interface is changing everything, because it's easier for people to understand what's happening there. And most of the time machine learning is really abstract. So we have an input and something is there's a workflow, and then we have the end result. So if you have in front end or in user interface, you can show direct what's the impact of what I'm doing here. So something is going in, then there is a modulation, and then we have the final product. And having a user interface and doing this with your stakeholders and going on guide them in a dashboard and going to your workflow and see what's happening in your machine learning model is very useful, because most stakeholders are not related to doing machine learning engineering stuff. They are business analysts or managers or directors. So it's very useful to have a good UI or a good front end from starting the project. So they're able to understand what's happening and can adjust or create PPIs for new requests or changes. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess a typical way for creating at least some mock user interfaces for people to be able to see well is what's called wireframing. And I wonder, well, you're probably aware of the technique of the practice, and I guess that's also applied in applications powered by machine learning. And so I wonder if you can name, well, I guess first you can confirm whether you use it or not, and then if you can name some key requirements that you have for building this kind of user interface.
So the regular ones are easy to use. So the engineers need no too big boilerplate to deploy or to develop there. It has to be easy to deploy. So developing and deployment should be easy. Then one of our key aspects is for us to have it on-prem, because we are not allowed to use, not allowed, but it's sometimes a problem to use cloud service. So we have confidential data, or we have special contracts, and we're doing a lot of effort to keep our data safe. So for us, it's important to have a service which we can host in our cloud, because we have, we try to keep our data in our cloud, because we have a high effort to keep it safe there and all the data safe. So for us, it's important to have it as a prime solution to host it in our cloud. Then also important for us is to have a good charting ability. So you can be sure we are using also obscure charts and like network diagrams. So we are in a need to have a charting ability to use many charts. Yeah, as I said, easy to develop. So, and it has to fit in our technology stack. So if it's possible to use a framework which is also able to use one of our standard charting libraries, which I'm pointing out later, this is super handy, because we can use we are used to that charting libraries, we are using them in our projects, so there is no need to train people in a new library. So that's one of the main goals, to have a fixed technology stack, because then we have our operations in place, which is taking care of the updates, and everything is in place. Sometimes it's hard to bring a new application or a new technology into our services, because then we have to go the full circle of all processes. And if we are able to use our technology stack, which are we used to, it's handy.
Okay. Recently, that was actually the occasion for which piqued my attention and drove to this, led to this conversation. Recently, you shared the thread with a number of tools that people can use for this purpose, and I guess you and your team may have used as well. And I was wondering if you'd like to say a few words about those tools, if you recall, or if not, I can remind you what those tools were, and yeah, just the context in which you use those.
Yeah, for sure. So there are many tools we are using, and also we are testing, because every time it's an evolution. So, and there's many stuff going on in the ecosystem, and because the need is real, we are not the only company which is in the need for having a good UI or a good front end for machine learning or for their data science project. So first of all, our easy or shortcut is always using Streamlit because it's super easy. You have features like a date picker, or also you are able to have a front end with a file upload, which so a business analyst is able to use it as front end and then to upload their Excel files or their CSV, and then do some adjustment with a slider or a date picker, what's in the need for the project. So then more advanced, and I really, really love it, it's Gradio, because it's more focused for machine learning, and it's super cool. There are so many features built into it in a short time, so the drive is there, and they're doing an amazing job to have it in your stack as front-end for machine learning. I highly recommend it. You can run it out of a Jupyter Notebook, you can run it in a Google Colab. It's super integrable, and yeah, it's cool. So then switching over to the enterprise stack, because here you're in the need of the server, and it's more for big companies because you have to throw in some effort to host the servers and have the infrastructure, but it's the enterprise stack. So it's Plotly with Dash, and the advantages here are you can use in Plotly, which is super cool. We are using it all the time as charting library. You can use it in the JavaScript ecosystem. You can use it in the Python ecosystem because there are frameworks for both ecosystems, and you are able to switch the direction of the project if you're using it, because you can develop some web applications with Node.js, and you're also able to host your application in your intranet over Python using the Python stack. And yeah, you're having a unique API to build your dashboards with Plotly. And it's there's also Drive. There are many features built into this library and their development. So, and there are also new kids on the block, I will call them like this. It's Panel. Panel is also super awesome. It's one of the newer one, and you're able to use chart libraries from Bookie, Matplotlib, and so on. Then there are also cloud services like DeepNote, which is super cool for collaboration. At the moment, it's only in the cloud, but they're working on a prem solution, and it's like Google Colab on steroids, and it's super cool to collaborate there. You are super fast because you spin it on and it's running in the cloud, and your whole team is able to do their data science project and collaborate. Yeah, there are also some other tools, but at the moment we are focusing on these tools.
Yeah, I think that's already enough to choose from. And just to clarify, I guess all of those tools are open source, or at least have an open source version, and I guess many of them may also offer enterprise editions.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, what I was going to ask you actually is if you can think of certain characteristics, let's say, along which to evaluate such tools, and to classify them. So we already kind of mentioned one, whether they're open source or closed source, and licensing, and their different versions, and so on. Previously, you also mentioned deployment models, so whether tools can be deployed on-premise, or they have a software as a service version. I guess another one would be their APIs and the kind of languages that they support. So we already have three, I guess. Do you think there are other ones that are, and those that I've mentioned so far are kind of generic, so they could apply to any tool category, really. Do you think there are others that are more specific for those kind of tool?
Depends on the project and what you need. There are also tools like Observable HQ, which is also running in the cloud and have many charting libraries with a click, and you can use it, but it's running in the cloud, and you have to put your data into their cloud. Yeah, and so one criterion for us to choose one of the tools is depending if we are in the need to host it in our secure environment. So then we cannot use at the moment tools like DeepNote because we have to run it in our cloud. So, and for that, also for Plotly Dash Enterprise, you need a license, so you have to pay for the service, but it's worse. It's what it costs. And Streamlit and Gradio, you can use free and host them in your intranet. If you are in a need for fast UI or fast front end, then choose them because it's super easy. You need nothing to, you install the Python libraries and then you're up to running and you're able to have your interactive machine learning front end.
Mm-hmm. What about the actual visual capabilities, let's say? Do you think there is something, well, let's put it that way. When you have some specific kind of visual in mind, like, I don't know, I would say pie charts or bar charts, but these are obviously kind of table stakes because I'm guessing
They're included in every tool we
exactly,
yeah.
exactly, yeah. But if you want something more elaborate, is there if you have like a specific diagram requirement for a specific visual, for example, is it a parameter that you take into account, and
Yes,
how
for
do you
sure.
classify tools in that parameter?
For sure. In this case, most of the time we are using Plotly because then with the dash stack, it's matured. But now we have to talk about the new kids on the block. It's Panel. You're able to use in Panel Bouquet and Matplotlib, so and HoloView, so that are also matured charting libraries. So yeah, you have to make this decision on other factors. I'm in love with Plotly, so maybe I'm a little bit biased.
That's okay. I mean, you, as long as you admit it, and you just did.
Yeah. So most of the time I try to use them because my team is also used to the API. So, but Panel is there. They're on the move.
Mm-hmm.
keep an eye on them.
Okay, I will. Yeah, I think I also saw you shared another one recently, which has a kind of funny name. So it's called GUI, which is kind of word play on GUI, the GUI, as we sometimes call these
But
tools.
yeah, these tools are more used for having a GUI for a Python application, not having a charting library in place or doing a business logic or a business intelligent application or a machine learning front end. It's possible to build it with them. It's also possible to use it and having a front end for your machine learning application, but regular use for it is to, if you're having a Python script and you're needing a front end for it, then use one of these libraries. But it's also possible to use Dash for it or to use Gradio or Panel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point and a good distinction actually, because I think that both scenarios are quite valid. So if you're like developing something, I don't know, a script or something, and you want like a quick and dirty way to either interact with it yourself or, I don't know, show it to a colleague, this is a very valid use case, I would say, for developing a kind of rudimentary user interface. Of course, as you say, it's a different case if you want to actually at least build on what you initially developed so that you can have like an actual end user interface in the end.
Yeah, for sure. So it's depending on your use case. So yeah, but most of the time I will use one of the applications we are talked about for also for front end for Python scripts without the need for machine learning or the need for a data science project.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So one thing that struck me about all of these tools that you mentioned is that unless I'm missing something, they all seem to be standalone, at least the ones I know better from this list, like Streamlio. So I was wondering if you see offerings in this area from more like, let's say, integrated frameworks, like, I don't know, if people, let's say, if you use the Cloudera platform, or I don't know, the Databricks platform, is there something in there to cover that kind of need? Or, and if there is it, I don't know, on par, let's say, with the tools that you prefer to use?
Depends on the project. So you're able to if you're using DeepNote, you can use also plotty charts in the service, and in Google Colab you're also able to use Gradio. So they're integrated in some kind of meaning. So, and then you have to make the decision if I want the full service or the full product and the full circle, then I'm going with Dash. And in other case, what depends on the project and the need. So if it's possible to have some kind of notebook in the cloud and using Google Colab, then you can also use plotty charts in that notebook. So yeah, it's interchangeable and integrated.
I see. And what about the model development part of the picture that you also mentioned initially? So how many and in what way, if at all, of those tools can be integrated in an MLOps platform? So if you have like, if you keep having like new versions of your model and potentially also new versions of your data sets, how are those tools able to keep up?
So that's one point. You can have it also in the tools, and then you have to, most of the time you have to build it by yourself. It's possible to have it in the tools, but for a real machine learning DevOps, I highly recommend it. Use the tools which are built for it, and then having one of the other tools for the front end or the last part of it. But keeping track of your machine learning models, then use machine learning ops tools like MLOps or MLZen. Or I'm a big fan of Dex Hub because it's like GitHub for data science projects. You can store your data there. You can integrate them in one of the tools which are using for machine learning ops, and use this tool because they are built for it, and it's easier to keep track in the tools because you have not to have some boilerplate for doing it your own in one of the other tools.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes perfect sense. I was more wondering about the touch points, let's say, between those two. So let me give you an example. So you have from between, let's say, one version and the next version of your model, something's changed. So you have new features, for example. If you want to show those new features in your user interface, is there a way for these tools to sort of introspect, let's say, and pick up the fact that, oh, the model now has a new feature, or is this something that you have to manually do?
Depends if it's a feature which is integrated in some of the existent. So for Gradio, so you can see direct the impact and you can adjust what data is going on. So it depends on the feature and what your front end is. So if not, you have to rebuild it and bring some features into the new front end.
Okay, I see. So it sounds like at least for some tools and in some cases, there is some sort of capability to pick up those new features, for example. Otherwise, it's manual work.
Yes, for sure.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I think you've highlighted some interesting areas of those tools. And so, yeah, and you also mentioned the fact that for, in your case at least, being able to deploy the tool on premise is a key factor because of, well, confidentiality reasons, basically, for your data. That apart, if you could choose among the other criteria for picking a tool, which one or which ones would you say are the most important?
So not keeping into account that we are used to have it in our own cloud. If we exclude this requirement, right? Did I get a question right? Yes, then it's for me, if I can choose it for a project which is not related for working environment, then having the ability to collaborate without the hustle in hosting an environment and having all the administration stuff running. So DeepNote is really cool in this case. Also, if you're having your own Plotly Dash instance spinning already in your environment, then it's super easy to use it. And yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think people will find your experience and your insights on using those tools useful when they also want to choose something from this category. So yeah, I think that's it. I think we covered lots of ground, and thanks for sharing. So, do you have any closing comments or ideas, and we can wrap up here, I guess.
We can wrap up. It was fun to talk to you and to share some knowledge about our development process. And yeah, thanks for having me.
I hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you like my work, you can follow Link Data Orchestration on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook.